Welcome to the next lesson on the networking topic. This one is quite a short one, so we'll just dive straight into it. So we're looking at client-server and peer-to-peer today, and on the screen you can see two pictorial representations of client-server and peer-to-peer. So on the left-hand side we have client-server, and on the right-hand side we have peer-to-peer. Hopefully you can see there's quite a big difference between them. So at the center of the one on the left, there is what is being represented as a kind of a desktop PC, but essentially a powerful PC, a server, which is going to provide some kind of service to the network. On the right hand side, there is no server. All the computers are kind of talking to one another, sending messages to each other, and there's no kind of one thing in charge. We call this kind of decentralizing the idea. So we have a centralized view of things, client server, and a decentralized view of things, and peer-to-peer. But we're going to kind of break those down and actually go into that in a bit more detail. So we're going to look at the roles of computers inside a client server and peer-to-peer. So I'll supply this link in the description to this video in my OneNote for those of you watching it through that. This video is done by OCR on their OCR website, and it's also happens to be recorded by someone that I trained as a teacher. So obviously I think it's awesome. He's a very great guy and really knowledgeable, so I do advise watching it. It does explain client server and peer-to-peer really well. So do watch that as well as this lesson. So let's get into the details now. So with a client-server model, the PCs, the iPads, the computing devices on the network will be the clients. And they'll talk to a server, which is going to be a much more powerful computer, in order to request a service from it. So the idea of a service is providing something that you need on your client, on your PC. So that might be a web server, for example, where you're requesting a web page off the web server so you can view it on your computer. It could be a file server where you're requesting a file to be downloaded to your computer, then you can do whatever you want with it. So the key behind it is that there is this powerful computer, this server, which is providing a service to the rest of the network. Computers will request services from that computer, and they are known as their clients. Okay, so genuinely the key point here is the client is dependent on the server to provide the information. I'll give you a bit more of a classic example. So in a school, if the file server goes down, then you'll not be able to access any of your files. Okay, so you won't be able to access your Word documents or anything like that. And 90% if the file server is down, you can't even get onto the computer, you can't do anything useful, you can't do any work, you can't save it, you can't continue on with work. So essentially it's a lesson where you're twiddling your thumbs in computer science, long and short of it. But this is the key. That file server, which is containing all the files, if it's not working, then you can't use it. You can't use that service. So we have this centralization of the thing that we want, the service that we require, the server. So we are dependent on that. Okay, so that is one of the key things about client server. So let's think about what we mean by the word server. Now, I've already said that server is a powerful computer, but you might be thinking, well, what does that actually mean? You know, I might have a powerful computer at home. I know it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's got an amazing graphics card. It's an amazing gaming rig. That's not a server. Okay, a server tends to be a very powerful computer. Okay, so we're talking about vast amounts of RAM, 64 gigabytes, 128 gigabytes, even more. We're talking about multiple CPUs, so more than one CPU, each CPU with multiple cores inside it. And they tend to be different shapes. So the kind of servers you'll find in Google, for example, in Google servers, will be kind of long, thin things which can slide into a server rack. It is well worth having a look for videos about Google servers. It is an interesting video. I will include it in the link so you can actually see it. Yeah, they are very powerful computers. So the kind of things they might do is access to files, managing access to the network through username, passwords, user rights, and things like that. controlling who is allowed to use what files, for example, allowing clients to access network printers. You have a network printer server, email services, backups, and basically any kind of service that's required by clients in your network, and it's using a single computer to actually do that job, that would be considered a server. So a client makes a request to the server, and then the server will respond in kind. So I've already mentioned examples, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but for example, you might have a web server. I will make a client request to it, so I'll request for a web page. The server will then find the web page on it, do whatever kind of magic he needs to do, SQL servers and all that kind of stuff, and then send you the response back. So that is an example of what we mean by service. So now's the perfect time to stop and make some notes on the idea of client server. Make a note on what server is, maybe find some images of servers, maybe watch that video in the description or my OneNote to show what a server actually really looks like. It's well worth making a note of it because it's not something you kind of come across very often. You hear the word, but you don't necessarily link that to powerful computers, so it's worth actually getting that down. Also, explain what a client-server model is. This idea that you have a centralized service which is provided by the server, and it's going to be a powerful computer, as I've already said, and it's having clients which will connect to it, which will get values and files and whatever it happens to be. I just want to make just one point clear. When I talk about a centralized service, what I mean is that it's providing a service to the rest of the network. I don't mean it's actually physically in the center of the network. That's not what centralized means, okay? I know it sounds like that's what it means, but it's not. Some of you might be thinking, well, obvious, that's an obvious thing to say, but you'd be surprised how many people might have made that misconception. So a server won't have to be in the center of the building. So if you went into a school and walked to the center of the school, you wouldn't find the server. It could be in the corner somewhere, it could be anywhere. It's just providing service to the rest of the network. So let's delve into peer-to-peer now. So one of the key differences between peer-to-peer and client-server is that there is no server in peer-to-peer. Every single computer that's connected inside a peer-to-peer network will work together to provide a service of some description, which is a big difference to client-server, where the server will provide the service and everyone else just uses it. In client-server, we say it's centralized. With peer-to-peer, we say it's decentralized, because there's no one single point in the network or one single computer in the network which we can go to get the service. Okay, we have to kind of work together to get it done. So let's look at two examples you might have heard of before. The first one is file sharing. Now, if you've ever heard the term BitTorrent, then you will have come across peer-to-peer. The way BitTorrent works is that a file is broken down into smaller parts, and those smaller parts are then shared with other computers. Now, as soon as one of those parts has been downloaded to another peer, other peers can start downloading it from that computer. So you end up with this kind of situation where the file is spread over multiple computers and everyone's kind of getting bits and bobs from different computers, and ultimately will eventually get their whole file. This is great for companies as well, so it's not just illegal torrenters who make use of this. Companies also make use of this for large patches. So for example, World of Warcraft, for anybody who plays that game, the patches are humongous sometimes. We're talking 20-30 gigabytes sometimes, and rather than having a single server which is providing everyone who plays the game with that massive file, what happens is that file starts to be downloaded to other people, and then you get this peer-to-peer thing happening. So you start getting part of the patch for one person, part of the patch for another person, and eventually you get the whole patch. The Blizzard will also have a bunch of computers with a full file on it, so you don't get a situation where you only have half a file and no one else has got the rest of it. However, it means that their servers don't have to be as powerful, they don't have to worry about the bandwidth as much, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. You get the file, quite quickly, and they don't have to pay as much money for their servers. The other one you might have heard of is cryptocurrency, so things like Bitcoin. I'm not going to go into detail on how Bitcoin works because it's incredibly technical. There's plenty of videos on the internet as well if you are interested in cryptocurrencies, but it does use the peer-to-peer model. So there is no one kind of bank of Bitcoin out there. Everybody kind of works together to kind of verify whether a Bitcoin is valid and whether actually you can spend it and all that kind of stuff. So it makes use of that peer-to-peer model. So let's look at advantages and disadvantages of client server first. So client server, it's easy to manage security files because it's in one single point. So you just secure the server, bang, you're done. It's easier to back up shared data, so you don't have this situation where data is spread across loads of different PCs in one place, so I can back up the data from that one place. One of the reasons why client server for file servers is very, very, very popular, because all your files in your school, in your workplace, or on a single computer, then we just back up that one computer and bang, all your work is protected. Technically, that's how it should work anyway. No dig there. Easier to install software updates as well, because we have a single point and every computer go, hey, do I need an update? And the server go, yes, you do. Install this, please. In a Windows network, this is called Active Directory, and it's just an easy way to manage the versioning of programs. Disadvantages. Obviously, it can be quite expensive because you have to pay for a big, powerful server. You have to maintain that server. You have to set it up. And servers are not straightforward. You do need someone who is skilled in managing and administrating servers. So you do need those specialized staff to maintain it. And it's a single point failure. So if that server goes down, bang, you can no longer use that service. So the server has to be kept up the whole time, 24/7, because otherwise, if it's not, you can't access the website or get your file or whatever the service happens to be. Looking at peer-to-peer advantages, disadvantages. Advantages are very easy to maintain because if a computer fails for whatever reason, well, I've got 20 others providing the same service working together. So it's absolutely fine, and there's no dependency on a single computer. You don't need specialist staff to maintain each and every one of those PCs because they're all kind of working together. So there's no kind of one point of focus, as it were. It's much cheaper to set up because you don't need lots of powerful hardware. As I've said in the example of file sharing and Blizzard, for example. However, it is much less secure. There's no centralized server, which is authenticating people. So people are just kind of piling in on there. Obviously there are methods to make it more secure, but on its default value it's not as secure as client server. Users need to back up their own files, so because it's decentralized, the individual person has to kind of do it themselves, as it were, so they are responsible for it. I'll give you an example. If you had a Bitcoin wallet and you lost it, sorry, you lost it, and that's it. There's no getting back. It can be different to maintain a well-ordered file store because peers will come up and down and all that kind of stuff. Especially on the internet, you have no real control over who's doing what. So now's a good time to make notes on all of that. So get an image to represent client server and peer-to-peer, and then explain what the two things are. Explain their role and the kind of things that they do. State advantages, disadvantages. Do explain as well what peer-to-peer is, just to be really clear about that one. If you've got the textbook, page 29-30, have all the information in there. And do have a look at how Bitcoin works. It is interesting, and it kind of talks about why decentralizing of currency might be a good idea. So it's an interesting thing, and you can make your own mind up whether it is or it's not.